Hello again, everybody. It is time for our second presentation. My dear friend Brian Smith. And Brian, I was thinking today that you and I have been doing this since about 2017.
Oh,
I
wow,
think,
really?
yeah, I kind of tried to figure that out today. And it's been such an honor to work with you. And we've done so many fun things together. So I'm very grateful that you're here today. And I'm going to just let you introduce yourself.
All right, cool. All right, everybody. I'm Brian D. Smith. The D only so people can actually find me because there are about 10 billion Brian Smiths in the world. I am a certified grief educator. I'm a life coach. I specifically help people go through difficult times in terms of grief. Just a little bit about my background. It's my daughter Shayna behind me. Shayna was 15 years old when she passed away 10 years ago in 2015. So she's the inspiration for why I do what I do. Also, I've got some kind of my grandfather was a pastor, a Pentecostal preacher actually, and that's informed a lot of what I do as well. Terry and I, as she said, we've known each other for quite a while. I guess 7, 8 years now. And she asked me to talk about the holidays and political things. So this could apply to politics or religion in a lot of different cases. These really charged issues that we have, and then we have to go deal with people that we might not otherwise be around if they weren't our families, if they wouldn't feel we had some sort of obligation to go and spend time with them. So it can cause a lot of trauma in our lives of thinking about this. And in terms of politics, we've had Republicans and Democrats forever, red and blue, and we've kind of gotten along for the most part. We might argue about issues, but things seem to be really personal now. I think we're in some ways more divided than we've ever been. In fact, a couple of months ago, I was offering some group sessions, and I offered one on political grief. People were in grief after the election, and it was hugely popular. I mean, people were they're signing up, and I have a friend, a really good friend. He's a conservative, he's a Republican, and he's like, "This is silly. This is ridiculous. Why are people in grief over an election? Get over it and move on." But we do take these things very, very seriously. And I actually heard a term the other day that I heard for the first time called moral injury. And this woman was talking about the reaction that we have to our fellow Americans, our fellow human beings, being so completely different than where we thought America was. So, you combine that rift that we've got now with going into the holidays, and it can create a really bad situation. And a lot of people are really dreading the holidays. Now, when it comes to the holidays, and you guys probably already, I'm sure you already know this, but this is time of year. I live in Ohio, so it's dark. It's dark. It's cold. It's rainy here a lot of the times. It's a very low energy time, and I always tell people we have to guard our energy. So when it comes to doing these holiday events, it's a matter of energy management. How are we going to manage the amount of energy we have, which is typically low this time of year anyway? So what I want to do today is give you some strategies that we can have as we go into this time, as we make our way to travel a week from today, and we might run into people who have political differences from us. Now, I'm pretty open about it. I am a liberal. Most of my family is, but we've got pockets of people on the other side, of both sides of my family, and it's interesting because my wife and I spend holidays obviously with both sides at different times. So on the one side, we've got people who are pretty quiet about their politics. In fact, they don't say much about it at all. So we can kind of not talk about it with them. On the other side, we've got people who like to be kind of sneaky about it. And to give you an example, a few years ago for Thanksgiving, we were together with my wife's side of the family, and I noticed some of them had on the backs of their phones, on their phone cases, stickers that say "Let's go Brandon." And in case you don't know what "Let's go Brandon" is, it's a way of basically saying "F you" to Joe Biden. And they deliberately put their phones like on the table in front of the rest of us, And it was really interesting because after we left, I was talking to my wife and I said, "Did you notice the phone, on the table?" And she's like, "Well, first of all, she hadn't noticed. And secondly, she didn't know what Let's Go Brandon even meant." So it was kind of funny in that it kind of backfired. But sometimes people will want to try to trigger you even if you don't want to talk about these things. So again, we're going to talk about some strategies for that. So it's again not just about politics. It's not just about maybe even religion. It's about protecting your peace and it's about staying aligned with who you are as we go through this. And I do want to say that we have agency in this. We get to make decisions. A lot of times people feel like, oh, it's family, so I'm obligated. I have to go. I have to do this. We're all adults. We all get to make our own decisions. And sometimes, and I heard as this was coming out, Terry was talking about, our chosen family versus our family that we're born into. And sometimes we have to choose family or choose the people that we're going to hang out with. And I can share this because it was posted publicly, but a friend of mine, I had written an article on Substack about the holidays, and a friend of mine was responding, and she was saying she's about my age, so she's getting a little bit older, and there's only she and one other sibling left, and so she's been spending Thanksgiving with her sibling. But her siblings decided to spend Thanksgiving with her friends as opposed to with my friend who's her sister. And so my friend's been driving like I guess 6 hours each way to go spend Thanksgiving with these people who she really doesn't know, who she really doesn't have much in common with, who don't really pay a lot of attention to her. And she realized this year I'm spending a lot of time and energy to go to some place where I really don't feel wanted, just so I can spend time with my birth sister. And she's decided this year she's not going to do that. She's going to engage her own tribe or her own group of people in her own neighborhood that she's got something in common with, that she chooses to want to spend time with, and who are going to energize her rather than draining energy from her. And that's, I think, that taking that autonomy, taking that agency is really important. So we don't have to do something as drastic as saying I'm not going to see my family, but maybe we employ some strategies as to when we do see them. So it's important, I think, to understand, why this is so difficult. And we talked about like this time of year. I, for a long time, suffered from seasonal affective disorder, which is the depression that a lot of us get around this time of year when it gets cold and gray and there's not as much sun. So there's that. There's that thing. There's also this expectation about the holidays. What keeps coming to my mind lately is this song. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we hear that, and people say it, and then other people are like, "It's not the most wonderful time of the year." I deal with a lot of people who are going through grief events, and you're thinking, "I'm thinking about the person I'm missing this time of the year." So it's this expectation that we're all supposed to be so hyped up and joyful this time of year when that's the opposite of what a lot of us feel. So that makes it difficult. And then we are wired for belonging. We want to feel belong. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel understood. And especially with family, we're told that family is supposed to be the closest people to us. So for me, frankly, I'm one of those people like they say don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion. Those are the things I like to talk about because I want to feel connected to people. I want to feel close to people. And even if I disagree with them, let's have a discussion. So when we go in and we're with family and we feel like we can't be our authentic selves, that makes us feel shut down. That makes us feel, less than. It makes us feel like maybe we don't even want to be there. And again, political identity today, I mean, we've always had red and blue, but it's even more intense now. And it's tied to our moral identity. We morally judge each other based upon the party and based upon the candidate that you support. And these disagreements feel very personal. I've got a good friend. I mean, Mike and I have been friends for about 40 years. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. And he's always been Republican. I've always been Democrat. It's never really been an issue. And we got together a few weeks ago, and we weren't talking about politics. We kind of agreed we're not going to do that, and it just came up. And he mentioned Joe Biden, and he just got like really bitter, just even saying Joe Biden's name. And I looked at him and I said, "Man, I've known you for like 40 years, but we can't talk about this because he just takes it so seriously and so much to heart and personally offended by the candidates that I've supported." So people tend to react from our wounds. We react from our fears. We react from our conditioning. And so stepping away from that is very important for us to maintain our own sanity and trying to even look at other people and trying not to judge them personally or morally because of the candidate that they might have to support. So those are some of the reasons why this is so difficult because again, we feel like we've got like personal skin in the game. We've got, they're high stakes here. I've got to convince you. So I do want to say this. I was thinking about this earlier because I like to talk to get people about stuff, and I like to look at what do we have in common. And I was thinking about what are things that Americans have in common. Well, one of the things we do have a desire, for example, for fair, functioning elections. Now we may have differences of opinion what that actually means, but I think we can agree on that principle. We have something in common: the importance of decency, of honesty, of kindness, being a good neighbor. Now, I don't know. We've got some politicians that are not modeling that very well right now, but I still think that hope and that's an American value. We've got a commitment to safety, to family, and to community stability. We want a reliable economy. We want stable jobs. We want opportunity for the next generation. And there's a lot of uh, concern on both sides now about political polarization. So if we are going to have these conversations, we can maybe focus on what do we have in common? What are the things that we can agree on? And let's start with that as a foundation to understand that we're all human beings and we all basically want the same things. We want to be loved, we want to be understood, we want to be safe, we want to be fed, all those things. And we might disagree on exactly how that happens, but let's start with the foundation. And what's really interesting to me, even on some of these, what we call hot button issues, like abortion, we might say, well, okay, abortion, that's a big divide. But most people believe in some abortion with with restrictions. Most people can agree on that in principle. Again, what those restrictions are, where we draw the lines, et cetera, we can get in debates about that, but most people agree on that. Most people agree on gun safety. Most people agree in reasonable gun safety. Now, again, where we draw the lines is where we might fall apart, but universal background checks, closing loopholes, red flag laws, domestic abuse restrictions, safe storage laws, like over 80% of Americans agree that we should have restrictions like that. So those are just a couple of things. Most people agree on gay marriage, for example, that people should be able to love whom they want. So we're not going to encompass everybody in this, but again, if we start talking to the people that are across the aisle or across the table from us on Thanksgiving, and if it does come up, what I like to do is focus on like what is it that we agree on. I've got friends that are very, very strongly pro-life, and we could still have conversations about it. Now we're not going to come to an agreement necessarily, but we can still have conversations about it. So the other thing about this is as we go into this, we decide strategically. I think it's really important to plan, by the way. Think about what's your plan going to be when you go. Know the people who are going to be where you're going to be, know how they are, what triggers them or what activates them, what triggers you or activates you, and make a plan. So the first thing is, should we engage or should we detach? Now, I mentioned earlier, it's easy to say, okay, well, we're just not going to talk about this. We're going to just let that go. But then to me, I don't feel like I'm being my authentic self. So I'm not that guy. But again, make that decision. If your relationship is very deep with somebody, right? You want to have that thing. You might choose to engage. If it's somebody that you only see once a year, or somebody that's maybe an in-law that you hardly ever see, you might decide I'm going to detach from from that thing. You want to engage if you have mutual respect. If you're going in the situation, and it's someone you have respect with, like I mentioned, my friend Mike. He came down and we've known each other for like 40 years, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to give it a shot with Mike. We're going to start to have this conversation, and I kind of felt him out, and it went kind of okay. But then I said, okay, that's probably as far as we can go. And it was funny because I posted my article on Substack the other day, and my friend Mike replied to it, and he's like, all you people here in the comments are all closed minded. let me tell you why you're so wrong, and you need to wake up the facts and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, Mike, this is probably need to let this go again. So we can also engage with people that have good emotional regulation. If you have good emotional regulation and the other person has good emotional regulation, maybe you can engage. If you're someone you know doesn't have good emotional regulation, that's someone you want to detach from. Um, you want to detach if it's performative provocation, right? Like my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, who put their "Let's Go Biden" stickers on the table in front of me. Okay, that's obviously deliberate provocation, right? So that I chose not to engage with that. You want to detach if it's not safe to fully be yourself. Some situations you may actually feel unsafe to be yourself. And again, if you don't have the relationship depth to fight, right? It's not that important to you that this person really understands you or feels you. Then you might say, okay, I'm going to let this go. I don't need to engage here. So the wisdom of knowing when to engage and when not to engage is again very important, and it's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on your how closely this is to you, and it's going to depend on the people that you're there with. And so for me, it's a dynamic thing, and it changes, every year, and it depends on who's in the room and like I said, where I happen to be. If it's with my wife's family, my wife and I talked about this the other day. We're going to be with her family this Thanksgiving. She goes, I was telling her I was preparing for this talk, and she goes, we don't talk politics. And just it was really more like a command than rather than a statement. It was like, yeah, Brian, we no don't bring it up in front of my family. So I know in that situation I don't. When I'm with my family, it's a little bit different, and there are some people there that that are on the other side, and I may or may not engage. So it just kind of depends on how I feel on that day and how things are going. So um, the thing is, go ahead, Terry.
Do you want me to check the chat for you and throw questions at you, or do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Sure, absolutely.
That was multiple choice. Which one?
Yeah, please check the chat. Yeah,
Okay, so Janice is just threw in there. She said, just a suggestion to stay in a hotel or at a friend's place and not stay with family. And
yeah, yeah. That's again, that's making that strategic choice, right? So if you got family members and you know you're going to need to get away or you might need a break, yeah, staying at a close by friend or staying in a hotel is a really smart thing. I saw that Heather commented, "I hate that song." I hate that song too, and again that feeling, that expectation that everything's supposed to be great just really can really bring people down. And just a personal story, I was many years ago, like 40 years ago, I was married to someone else. I've been married to my wife now for 35 years. I was married to someone else, and we were together for about a year at this time, and I realized, I started looking back over the year we've been together. Every single holiday, we had a major blow up. I mean, like, I'm talking about like threatening self harm. I'm talking about breaking dishes. I'm talking about throwing, major blow up. And I thought, like, Valentine's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, uh, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I mean, you name it. And I finally was like, I looked at my wife at the time. I said, what is the deal? Why does every holidays I look back over the last year for these major fights? And she's like, my expectation gets so high about the way things are supposed to be. When it doesn't turn out that way, I think it's just the end of the relationship. And that's how, and that's an extreme example, but people, they have that feeling, this expectation, because we tell people you're supposed to be happy this time of year. And as I said, I think it actually runs counter to the way that our bodies are feeling. And the people who first started some of the holiday traditions we have now, I think the reason why we have them in these cold times of the year, because they're bringing evergreens into the house because they wanted something green. They're lighting things. They want light because at that time they didn't have the lights that we have now, right? So they're trying to lift their moods because I think naturally our bodies are just saying this is a time to rest. This is a time that we're low energy. I used to tell my girls when they were young, this time of year, I'm like, the trees are dropping their leaves. They're going to sleep. The trees are going to sleep until spring. And that's the way I feel a lot of times this time of the year. I mean, I'm like, I'm very much driven by the sun. So I'm ready to go to bed now. It's like, I don't, I can't go to bed 8 o'clock, but I'm ready to go to bed because it's been dark for 3 hours. So we're actually fighting our natural cycles. And it's great. I mean, it's great that we have the holidays. It's great that we have this time to lift us up. But let's also be realistic about our expectations of what our energy levels are going to be this time of year. And again, manage your energy. We're talking about, and I know not everybody is Christian. There's people of different faiths, but Christian, or Christmas, as I was arguing with my Jewish friend years ago, Christmas is pretty much a secular holiday now. It's not, it's hardly even religious. And I was hearing that, I think Fox News even did a segment like, don't buy gifts for everybody this year but there's that pressure, to spend money that we don't have, even if it's traveling, there's this pressure this time of year. So yeah, just expectations to reality. Yeah, that's exactly right. We've got to be, realistic about what we can accomplish, and that in terms of, like I said, buying gifts and traveling and all those things. So we talked a little bit about some of the survival strategies. We talked about, like, if you have to travel with family that you might have some rub with. And again, it could be a sister, it could be a brother, it could be your parents. It could be your child. We're going through things now where politics are dividing us in a lot of ways. It may be kind of uncomfortable, but you might want to say, maybe we should stay at a hotel. That way, at least you have your own space that you can retreat to if you need to. Um, have some redirect phrases ready if people start, trying to engage you and you don't want to engage. Just things like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, or I understand. And just, maybe let it go with that to kind of disarm them and not go further in the conversation. You might want to say something like, let's save that for another time. Or, so things that distract the other person. You can identify your safe people in the room, right? So there may be people you do feel safe having these conversations with, and maybe you have the conversation with them out of the earshot of the people who you're not safe with. Again, we talked about, I had this in my notes, but stay in a hotel. You have a sanctuary, you have an exit plan. You can take a walk, you can take a step outside. You can do some mindfulness techniques, like doing some breathing techniques. Just step into the bathroom, and do a breathing exercise if people start to get at you or start to irritate you. Um, Time boundaries for me are very important. I'm very much an introvert anyway, and I don't like being in big crowds for a very long period of time. And when my wife and I were first, in our relationship, we'd go places and she wanted to stay all day and I wanted to leave early. So we started doing is we start making a plan. It's like, we're going to stay till 2 or we're going to stay till 3. So that way I had a time that I knew I was shooting for, that I need to stay this long. And she had a time that when she knew that I was going to be ready to leave. And it's flexible. It's not like, okay, it's 2 o'clock, it's time to go, but we just set up that expectation that it's going to be a limited amount of time. And if it's something that's really really stressful to you, arrive late and leave early. So you don't have to be there necessarily all day long. Again, you have agency. You can make a choice as an adult where you're going to be, how long you're going to be there, and what you're going to engage with. And I find a lot of people feel like, because this is my family, because of expectations, I have to do this. And there's really very, very little in this life that you have to do. So when you hear yourself saying, I have to do that, that's one of those things you want to question. Is this true? Do I have to do this? And again, there are ways that we can talk about this. I work with a lot of people that are in grief, and this is a very very difficult thing for them to do, and they're like, I have to go see my. I'm like, just be honest with them. Tell them I don't have the energy for it this year. I had a client that lost her son a year ago this past April, and last Thanksgiving, she just told her family, she said, I can't do it this year. I just, so she spent time by herself. This year, it's going to be something different. But, just be honest with people like, I need this space, or I need some time, or I can't be there for very long. So just know I'm going to come. I like to be there. I love you. I'm going to make an appearance, but, I'm not going to stay all day. So again, I want you to think in terms of energy management rather than obligation. You only have so much energy. We all only have so much energy. I, I I think of ourselves as we're rechargeable batteries, and so I need to be recharged. And when I feel myself getting down, I need to find ways to be recharged. And this time of year, I don't have as much energy as I might have in the summer, so I manage my energy differently. During this time of the year. And when it comes to obligations over the holidays, for me, my Thanksgiving, my daughter's birthday is the 22nd of November, and then there's Thanksgiving, which is always right around the time. Then my mother's birthday is the 30th of November, and I'm a big Ohio State fan, football fan, and the Michigan game is always the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So I'm always navigating like, okay, where am I going to be? Because my wife wants me to be with her family on Thanksgiving, and then my family in Columbus, which is 2 hours the other way, wants me to be there for my mother's birthday. And I'm like, and I want to see the football game. So I'm like, I get to have a say in where I'm going to be during that time too. So I told my wife, okay, well, we're going to do this and then we're going to do this, but we're not going to stay here for that long, or we're not staying overnight because I don't have the energy for that. Um, Terry posted, here's a great document called 12 Steps for a Conscious Christmas. I like that because it's really about being conscious. It's really about being deliberate. It's really about, again, claiming your agency. And I tell people there's no right or wrong decision as long as it's a decision that you make deliberately, as long as it's, you decide that I'm going to be conscious about this decision. Like with my friend who's like found herself kind of going along with her sister who said, well, I'm going to be with these people on Thanksgiving. So you need to be with me. And finally, my friend said, no, I don't. I don't need to be with you. I'm not driving 6 hours, each way to spend time with people that I really don't want to be with. I'm going to be with people that, that make me feel uplifted, the people that recharge my energy. So if you have a significant other, have this conversation with them and tell them how you feel, and come to an agreement, and hopefully they respect the fact that you need to have your own thing as well. And the same thing with your family. Don't let anyone guilt you into doing something that doesn't feel comfortable for you, um, because it's really again, it's about energy management. It's about uh, we want to. I love the connection of family. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday by far because I don't have to buy stuff for people, and it's like the most low key holiday. And I love the fact it's called Thanksgiving. But I want to be around people where I do feel grateful to be sharing time and space with them. And there's maybe people there I don't feel as grateful spending time and space with. So I want to manage that as well. Um,
Something I want to just jump in and say,
yeah.
there's this great document that I made a note to share with everybody. In fact, I'm going to put it in the chat, and it's really more about politics, and it's a bunch of tips for like how to maintain your sanity during the current political climate, which is not really about this, but one of the things that's in there that I pulled out that I think is really relative to this, where he says, control the only territory that you truly own, which is your response. And
Mm,
he says the government controls regulations, corporations control markets, mobs control noise, but you control reaction. That is your last and greatest freedom. I thought that was a really cool idea. And so that's energy management.
yeah.
And it goes back to what Mary was saying, our previous speaker, about, and I've hooked onto this mantra about seeing yourself as undefended. and unarmored. The only
Mm,
thing you can control is your reaction. And so if the family is like sinking into their drama, or Uncle Ron is ranting about his racist crap, or, whatever the thing is that gets you triggered, the only thing you can control is your reaction. And like you're saying, Brian, you can leave, you can change the structure of what you do. You don't have to go to Uncle Ron's house anymore. You can
hmm
say to the family, you know what? Every year we're there with Uncle Ron, and every year he's so offensive. I don't want my kids to be around that. I can't be around that. We're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Uncle Ron's going to be there, I don't want to be subjected to that. We'll do Thanksgiving at our house, or we'll do it somewhere else. And as you're saying, Brian, we're adults, we have autonomy, we have agency, we can change the structure. And another thing that you always bothered me when I was in my 30s, late 30s, and I was married and I had a young toddler, and my husband's brother and his wife had two little toddlers. He and his brother used to have to go home for Christmas, and home was on the East Coast. We were in California, and like, yeah, we have to go home for
Yeah.
Christmas. It's like, you're 37 years old. That's not your home. Your home is here in California with your wives and children. But we had to take these three little kids under 5 and 4 adults who work full time and get on a plane and
Wow.
fly from California to New York. And it was ridiculous. When the parents were retired, they had nothing but time
Yeah.
and plenty of money. And there was no reason why they couldn't get on a plane and come to us. And I put my foot down, because I didn't come from that thinking of flying home for Christmas, because my parents lived right down the street. And
Yeah.
I said, we're not going to do this anymore. And lo and behold, my in-laws agreed to it. They said, okay, you know what? You're right. It doesn't make sense to take 4 full-time working adults that have 3 children under 5 between them and drag your asses on a plane to New York. That's stupid. Thankfully, they were rational and they did agree to do it.
Yeah. That
Why
is a
not make a boundary?
Yeah,
Well,
that is a really good point too, because things change, and going home for Christmas is something that we do when our parents are young and we're young, and maybe when we're single.
or
But
in
when you,
college,
yeah, and but you marry someone else, and things have to change. So, this is not nearly as extreme, because one of the reasons I live where I live is because I'm not going to move too far away from my family, because I don't want to be on a plane on the holidays. So my family's 2 hours north, and my wife's family's 2 hours south of us. We live right in the middle. But I remember when my wife was pregnant with, it was right after she had my daughter, and I said, okay, Christmas, this, just like you said, this is our home. So I'm like, we'll travel after Christmas, but Christmas Day we're going to be in our house, and that was we established, because I'm like, at some point my parents started having Christmas at their house, so it's time for us to have Christmas at our house. So accept that, that things change, as you said, Terry. I mean, parents get older, we get older, we have spouses, we might move across the country, and it's crazy to spend all that time, money, energy, and traveling like that. And that's a really good example of being conscious. Like, instead of doing something just because we've always done this, let's do something else. And even right now with my wife and myself, my parents are one direction, her family's another direction. So every Thanksgiving we're like, are we going to be there? We're going to be here. And a few Thanksgivings we said we're going to stay here. And then, but I said several years ago, I said Christmas is going to be at our house, And my daughter, so far, my daughter's always come here. One day that's probably going to change, and I need to accept that, because she just got engaged, and when she gets married, she and her husband, they're going to probably do something different. So that idea that we have to do this because we've always done it, or we have to do it because someone's expecting us to do it, is not helpful, not something we should do.
and so for the politics, if you really do have vastly different politics at the table, is the best idea to just make a rule that we're not going to talk about it? Does that work? Or is it just so, I mean, if they have, the news on the TV in the background, I mean, is it, I guess the thing is like no TV, no talk about politics or religion. But I guess there's always going to be someone who can't resist praying over the dinner or bringing up something. I mean, I guess it's different in every family, right? How feasible is it to set those boundaries?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, you could try, right? You could always say, okay, we disagree on politics. Let's decide for this day. We're not going to talk about it. That is a strategy, and you made a really good point. Every family is different. In my family, I don't have any people that are too vocal about it that they can't shut it off for a little while. But I do remember going to my sister-in-law's house in West Virginia one year and staying there for a few days, and they had Fox News on TV all day, every day. So you are going to have people like that. Um, I don't, it's again, it's different for everybody because the idea of restrictions, like about conversations and rules, but sometimes you might have to put that in place because there are families that they can't have those conversations. Um, but when one of the things, you were talking about, we control our responses or control our reactions. The four agreements, I guess one of my favorite one of the four agreements is not to take things personally. So what I try to do is to understand that people who differ with me politically do it for a good reason in their mind. No one is deliberately just choosing to be evil or to be mean. They think it's justified. And I try to understand, where is that coming from? Why do they think it's justified? And again, going back to like, what do we have in common? We'll take the immigration issue, for example. Uh, they'll say, I just want to be safe. You have a lock on your house. We should have borders. And that's where they're coming from. So I'm like, I have a different point of view, but I know that most of them, now there are some, most of them don't just want to be mean to people, but they think it's a safety issue. So what I try to do is again try to understand, okay, this person, we differ on the policy, but we agree on what the goal is. We do want to have reasonable immigration laws. I don't, they'll put up a thing and say, because like some people here will say, okay, well, you're just for open borders. You just want everybody to come in. And we'll say, well, you don't want anybody to come in. And neither one of those things are true. And when we go to those extremes and when we react that way rather than responding, then that's when we really run into trouble. So if we are going to have these conversations, we can start with like, what do we have in common? Like I'll even tell people, I'm not for open borders. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have, immigration laws. I don't know anybody who is for that. And so that could maybe disarm that a little bit if we do get into that conversation.
Another thing too that I found works is just keeping it very short. As I said in the last session, I visited my family for my dad's 99th birthday. I went to
Mhm.
LA. I was in and out in 36 hours. I flew to LA. I mean, I made it so short and without, verbally saying, here are the rules, we all just understood. We're okay politically, we're all on the same side, but religion is our big issue.
Hmm.
And it was just understood, we're not going to talk about religion, we're not going to talk about Israel, we're not going to talk about, we all know what the issues are.
Yeah, yeah,
And it just, and for 30, or I was actually technically only with them for 24 hours. If you keep it short, you avoid the possibility of conflict. The
yeah,
less contact you have, the less exposure you have, the less likely something's going to come up. The more time you're there, the more likely it is. I've learned that from years of practice. So that's another strategy,
yeah.
is short bursts.
Yeah, but there's still, for me, there's this tension because I want to be authentically myself, especially with people who I'm supposed to be close to. So, we can always say, well, we're just not going to talk about this or we're not going to talk about that. And that is a strategy to avoid that conflict. But then the whole time I'm there, I'm feeling like uncomfortable because I can't be myself. And this has been me with my family for most of my life when it comes to religion. My family is very religious. And so, as you said, Terry, there are different issues for different ones of us. And so for a long time, I was just kind of like, in the closet about certain things. I wouldn't bring them up. And the older I get, the more I'm like, I really feel like I need to be myself. So everybody's got to decide like what's your boundary? What's your thing? How far are you willing to go? How far can you go? Because yeah, we could always say, well, the strategy is just don't go home, or the strategy is just don't spend much time there, or don't be yourself. So it's going to be nuanced. It's going to be different for different people in different situations. And I might be able to do that with my brother's father-in-law, for example. But with my brother, I would rather have those conversations with him if I can. And with my personal brother, it's not a problem. So, yeah, it's again, it's that gray area, I guess. Sometimes, like, how far do we go with people? Um, be aware why we're choosing to spend time with families. It's to reminisce and reaffirm our love for one another. Act accordingly. Bring photo albums and fun, sweet stories from days gone by. Yeah, yeah. So
Shift
yeah,
the
the thing is,
focus.
yeah, why? Why am I going to be with my family? Do I really want to be with my family? Ask yourself that. Because again, you have permission to say, I don't want to be with this person, Uncle Ron, who's just a bigot and always says the wrong thing, and I just don't want to be around that person. I don't want my children to be around that person. That's a fair choice. So, everything's on the table. It's that you have to use your discretion, your wisdom to decide. Um, so, when we do these things, and just like Terry just talked about, we have to decide, what do we want? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be healthy? Do I want to go in and try to prove something? Do I want to just get through this? Do I want to be heard? Do I want to get a point across to somebody? Only you can decide that, because I'm very active on Facebook, and I talk about politics, and people tell me you shouldn't do that. That's bad for your business. It's bad for your reputation. I'm like, I want to be heard. I want to be authentic. So I'm going to be on Facebook, and I'm going to talk about politics. That's my choice. When you go to see your family, you have to make a choice. What is it you want? And ask that question. Again, another thing we can do is we can speak in values, not necessarily politics. So let's start with, what are our values? What do we both want? We both want to be safe. We both want to be healthy. We both want, reasonable gun control. We both want people to be able to immigrate in a legal fashion. So start with that. Um, you can say things like, where that doesn't make people so on edge, like, well, I understand that's how you see it, but it's not how I see it. So rather than calling someone wrong, kind of disarm them with saying, this is my opinion. Or you may just, choose to walk away and say, you know what, I'm not going to have this conversation today. I'm choosing peace.
Now, here's
Um,
another thing, Brian.
mhm.
Sorry to interrupt you,
No, go
but
ahead.
I'm with you. I like to be heard too. Obviously, I put on a show like this, and I'm on
Yeah,
Facebook, and I have Substacks. I want to be heard for sure. That's why I'm a college teacher. But something I have learned, and this actually, you'll recognize this from the Bible. You can't be a prophet in your own village,
yeah, yeah.
right? And that when I found that passage, I thought that's going to be the title of my next book. And that's like the hardest lesson I learned. And that's what I use now with my family
Hmm.
is that's like one of the greatest truths. Like all kinds of people, same with you. A lot of people know us and respect us and think that we're really smart and they really, they buy our books and they follow us on social media and they think we're brilliant. And we are. And they want to hear us, but our families don't give a shit how smart and wonderful we are because you can't be a prophet in your own village. And I decided that that's what my next book is going to be about and what a hard lesson that is. So, as much as we want to be heard and we have all this great wisdom, can't we just learn? Or I should speak for myself. Can't I just learn to keep my mouth shut when I'm with them and go post some shit on Facebook and talk to you and talk to my audience and let you guys hear me because you do want to hear what I have to say and
Yeah.
not feel like I need to tell them. They haven't listened to me in 73 years. Why are they going to listen to me now? And all I've ever heard from them my entire life is how useless and stupid I am, and how they don't want to hear anything I have to say. Why would they listen to me now? Who cares that I have a doctorate in my field? None of it matters, because to
Yeah.
them, I'm still a flaky little 14-year-old,
Yeah.
and that's just,
You'll always be that 14-year
and
old. Yeah.
I'll always be that. And so it really comes down to me having to do that work internally inside myself to let go of that need. It is my need, just I'm still that 14-year-old in a way, because it's like, mommy, daddy, please see me, approve of
Yeah.
me, tell me
Yeah.
I'm a good girl, right? How much of this is about that?
Yeah,
And even maybe,
I
yeah, go ahead.
love that. I think that's so smart because yeah, they want to when you walk in the house, you're immediately the 14-year-old girl. You become the 14-year-old girl. We all want to please our parents and be respected by our family. But I will say this also though, sometimes they surprise me. I did a video pretty recently on what happens after we die. And my family's very religious, and I didn't know there was no Jesus in there, there was no God in there or anything. And I didn't expect to get much out of my family. And one of my cousins sent me a message on Facebook and said, "This video was really great. I showed it to someone who just lost his wife and he wants to talk to you." And I was just like, I was really surprised because this is one of my very religious, very Christian, cousins. So we can still put it out there, but without the expectation they're going to listen to us because they're probably not.
Yeah, sometimes I just, like, when I feel like doing that, I just go talk to the dog,
Yeah.
because I know the dog is going to listen. But that's just kind of the thing. All right, so we have 10 minutes. How about comments from you guys? Questions, comments, put stuff in the chat. Brian, thank you. This has been so good. So good. I always love everything that you
Yeah, I
have
like
to
to hear
say.
what other people's strategies are. If you have a strategy you want to share, feel free to share it in the chat or come online.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes and then we have a 15-minute break. So, Brian, if you want to stay a little longer,
Okay.
you're welcome to hang out.
Yeah, I again, Terry, I think I love having these conversations with you because they're different strategies for what we do, and they're different. I think I said different expectations. My family is actually my mother. As she's gotten older, she's matured in her faith. I'll put it, and some of the things I put out, I'm like, oh, they're going to go crazy when they hear this, and they don't. It surprises me.
They're matured.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe they grew up. Maybe they, as we all do when we get older, it's like maybe some things aren't worth the fight, right?
yeah.
And
And-
also something Janice said back here, and this is something I meant to say earlier. So I just read a really good book about family estrangement. It's called Fault Lines, if anybody's interested. Really good book. And it says in that book, like, what are the things you need your family for? And it has some bullet points, like
Hmm.
maybe you need them, could be something like you want to be included in the inheritance. It could be that. That's why you want to stay connected. Or it could be maybe, like, for me, I'm not a fan of my family, but the one thing I do like when I talk to my sister, really the only thing, is we're the only two people who remember things about growing up in the 1950s in our neighborhood. And
Hmm.
we can talk about, remember that, remember those old cartoons, remember we used to have that. That's kind of fun for me. And that sometimes is the reason to stay connected, even though the other stuff is horrible. So
Yeah.
and so Janice was talking about photo albums and things like that. Go ahead, Janice, you have your hand up. Talk to us about that or
Brian,
whatever.
thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm excited. You and I are absolutely on the same page. My whole practice is working with people who have left cults and high demand
Hmm.
religions and conspiracy groups. And so, yeah, you and I were just firing on the same cylinders there. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the personal experiences that you brought to it as well. I'm in Canada, but we still have people here with very different ideas from one another, including in our family groups. And so knowing that we can give ourselves permission not to attend is a very big deal. And then, yeah, having other tactics ready, like have a safe place to stay if you're going to need one. bring photo albums, bring games. I don't recommend Cards Against Humanity only because it can be very R-rated, but ransom notes is one that I've done with my family, and everybody laughs hysterically at it. And also I love the idea of setting boundaries sometimes ahead of time in an email can be helpful, so
Mm-hmm.
everybody is aware. But yes, thank you very much. I really appreciated it.
Yeah. Thanks for your comments. Yeah.
Even setting boundaries in an email can be combative. I tried that with my family once. I said, we're not going to talk about Israel. And please, can we not talk about that? Because there's
Mm,
a super Zionist. And they screamed at me, you're anti-Semitic, when you should. That was a really bad idea. So sometimes setting boundaries can be antagonistic because you're bringing it up.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you're talking to people who are fundamentalists, and you can be fundamentalist about any issue, and I say that as in like leaving no room for any other opinion. You can't reason with somebody that says you're either 100% with me on this or you're anti-Semitic. I have a dear friend who's Jewish, and we don't speak anymore because I think there's something to be said on the other side of the issue, and he won't hear it. So that's a situation where you can't have a conversation with someone like that. You have to agree to let it go, and even saying let's let it go becomes something that causes a conflict.
That kind of speaks to Sue's question about how to deal with people who hold conspiracy theories. It's really the same thing that what you just said, because
Yeah,
that's an extreme position.
you're trying to reason with someone who's basically in a cult, right? And we know about cult behavior, and we know that one of the things about a cult is there can be no disagreement, like none. And a cult can be a church, it can be religious, it could be a conspiracy theory. Um, the only thing is you can't engage with people that believe in conspiracy theories. I love the saying that says you can't reason someone out of a position that they haven't reasoned themselves into. So it's a big mistake to try to reason with people who believe in things that have no, reasonable basis for. One of the rules I use on Facebook when I get in with people like that, I will respond to their comment like 3 times, and after that, I let it go because if they haven't even answered one of my points, because you can make points and they won't respond to your point. They'll just bring another one up. That means they're never going to. So at that point, you just let it go.
So Janice, for those of you who don't know, Janice is a therapist who works with people, among other things, who struggle to get out of cults. And she said something really good here about
Hmm.
when our ideology is enmeshed with our identity, we can't help but take critiques about our beliefs as personal attacks. Can you say
That's
more about that, Janice?
Sure. Yeah, I speak from experience, having come out of a very, very fundamentalist religion. I I held my beliefs so tightly that the dynamic switched, so that in the end it was my beliefs that were holding me. So I
yeah,
didn't have the ability to kind of view them at arm's length. And my identity and ideology were thoroughly enmeshed. Um, so that I couldn't just say I appreciated something. I had to say I am this thing. I am
yeah.
this thing. And then yeah, when people would try and poke holes in it or just show me that maybe everything I was believing wasn't entirely correct, I really took it personally.
Hmm.
So I would cry sometimes, like I would be so upset. So I do understand that. And I do also want to say some people are committed to misunderstanding us. So I love your three-time responses, Brian, on Facebook. And after that, if the person is holding that tightly and they're committed to misunderstanding us or not being open and receptive to what we're saying, we don't have to keep engaging.
Yeah.
And yes, thanks, Terry. Thanks for putting Divorcing Religion website in there.
Yeah, if any of you are struggling with that, with getting away from, a high demand religious environment is the term that we use. Janice is awesome. I've known her for a few years now and just really support her work. And Brian,
Yeah.
you two should look at each other. You guys would.
Yeah, because I understand it, and I hadn't heard that language before. I love that our identity becoming enmeshed with our ideology. Because I've realized that when someone talks to people who are emotionally regulated, who understand that my beliefs are not me, we can say, okay, you don't agree with my belief, but doesn't mean you're discounting me as a person. For people that have that issue where their identity is their belief, they feel like you might as well be hitting them with a hammer. When you say that, this is wrong, it's like, no, you're saying I'm a terrible person. That's the way that they hear it. I don't know, maybe Janice, there's not a to me there's not an answer for that, because that's their problem. That's not your problem. So it's like people that hold on to conspiracy theories, it's like it's become part of their identity. And that's what we're going through in politics right now. It used to be like, I'm a Republican, and that was kind of an identity, but people could at least, hear about their thing. But now it's like, I'm MAGA. And it's like I am MAGA. And it's like if you criticize any of that, they feel like you're attacking them. So when it comes back to our holiday thing, you have to understand, first of all, you're not going to change anybody's mind over the Thanksgiving table. So if it's someone who's reasonable and you can have a conversation, fine. But if it's it's not even a three-strike rule. It's like we just don't go there.
It's also a definition of verbal abuse is there's a difference between saying, Brian, I think your idea is stupid, and saying, Brian, you are stupid.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it it's it's one of the things that Donald Trump does when he's yelling at reporters. And he recently did this with this woman, and he called her a pig, and he
Yeah.
said, you're a terrible person. He does that a lot. You're a terrible reporter. You're terrible. Or he's
Mm-hmm.
he's a bad person. And it's verbal abuse. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's horrible. I mean, first of all, nobody in a position of power like that should ever say that about anybody.
Right.
But if you are going to say that, you can say somebody's not a good, didn't do a good job on reporting a story or something. But when it's their identity that you're attacking, you're a stupid person, you're a bad reporter, that's a whole different thing. I
Yeah.
mean, you
That's exactly right, and that's where the one of the four agreements comes in. Not to take things personally. That's on me. So I can learn not to take things personally, but I can't teach it to somebody else. They have to learn it for themselves. So that's the thing. If it's someone I can find it, we can have a conversation. I can disagree with you, and you don't take it personally, then we can keep going. But if you're going to take it personally, or as Janice says, if you're committed to misunderstanding, and I've met those people, it's like they will twist anything you say into something that they can just disagree with. You have to let it go. You have to walk away.
I see Mary is still here, and I wonder if you want to say anything about this, Mary. Like, and maybe this is a right speech thing. Like,
Well,
you know,
I was just, it's been such an interesting conversation, but the thing I was thinking about right now is coming from a more spiritual view or lens when observing someone who's going into violent language, violent communication, upregulation, that person also is in suffering.
Mhm.
And to remember that this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like, this is suffering, which also helps us not demonize
Yeah.
the person before us and begin to other them, which is war. That's what we do in war, is when we get into these orientations to each other and dehumanize each other. So just the importance to keep humanizing when we're witnessing things that are difficult.
Yeah. I try to look at them as unskilled rather than they're evil or they're doing this. There's like that they're just unskilled. And as you said, they're suffering. They're so that at least humanizes them. We can deal with them with compassion. Even if I have to walk away, I walk away with, well, I did the best I could, rather than being angry with them, because it's like they don't. It's like Jesus said, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
and there's probably a way to, think about this with, being in leadership or management. If you want to critique somebody or tell somebody they didn't do a good job on something. I mean, I can't imagine myself ever saying to anybody, you're a bad writer or a stupid student. I mean, I can't even imagine that ever coming out of my mouth,
Right.
But people do that. I mean, I would say to a student, let's talk about how you could write this better,
Hmm.
or let me show you, another way to do this. But I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that. But I guess in families, people would do that. You're so
Yeah.
stupid. You always lose your keys.
Yeah.
You're always late. Can't you learn how to be on time? I mean, that's violent communication.
It is, and it's a skill to know how to say things properly, and again, so that's why I try to look at people that don't say. It's like they're unskilled. They haven't learned how to communicate effectively. So that way I can not take it personally, even though as they say I mean, it's very personal when someone says you're stupid or you're a terrible person or you're an evil person. But I'm like, they just don't know how to use the proper language because I don't believe anybody is an evil person. People do evil, but I don't believe there are evil people.
Anyone who says that, you're stupid, you're an evil person. I mean, again, I just call that verbal abuse,
Hmm.
that's all. And, I was in an abusive marriage for a long time, and that's where I learned a lot of this, and
Hmm.
what, and I took a lot of classes on this and did a lot of therapy on it. And it was kind of like the only thing you can do with that, well, is leave,
Yeah,
obviously, but what I used to do is almost at the end is just sort of mock him and say, okay, all right, so I'm really, really stupid and I'm mentally ill. So I guess I'm not fit to live in this world and I should probably be in a mental hospital and kept away from children and, not, I mean, I would make fun of him. That's all I could do was like laugh at it until I learned how to be strong enough to leave. But the only people who really talk that way are like Mary says, really broken, hurt,
exactly,
wounded, suffering people. And
exactly.
Donald Trump, I don't care if you love him. You might be the biggest Trump fan in the whole world, but it's not okay to talk that way. And that is coming from woundedness, even if you are his biggest fan. Curtis, you have your hand up. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, really first, really appreciative of everyone and everything that's being said. I'm reflecting on a lot of what I'm hearing in this part of the conversation. Um, and I listen to a podcast because I have a toddler and an infant, um, called Good Inside with Dr. Becky. Um, and one of the things that I keep reminding myself, because I'm trying to teach emotional resilience to my 3-year-old when his 10-month-old sister, takes a water bottle that is hers, and suddenly it's the one that he needs to have, is that, no one learns to swim by, um, getting yelled at. You don't, you need in thinking about emotional regulation as a skill. Just like Brian is saying, and it's not like you can just kind of yell at someone into developing that skill. And it's not like, well, at what age did you learn to swim? Like it's something that people develop naturally. Um, so it's so much more of like trying to model that emotional resilience and giving space for it and teaching them to like real teaching someone to realize through the steps of that and like that shouldn't be the responsibility of, you know, uh, a son at a dinner table or, an in-law at a dinner table or, um, uh, a person who has been marginalized for their characteristics against someone who has the privilege. It shouldn't be that person's responsibility, but, um, it is still, uh, the recognition of like they are unskilled, and if you are willing to hold the space and help them step into that, I think that's beautiful. And I'm rambling now, but yeah, really just those kind of thoughts.
It should be the responsibility of the people who raise us to model that, but now here we are with Uncle Ron,
Yeah.
and that was modeled for Uncle Ron to be racist and abusive and all the things he is, this fictitious Uncle Ron that we're making up.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to heal him at the dinner table.
Yeah. It comes back to what you said earlier, Tara. We only control how we respond to things. We can only control our own behaviors. So as much as we want to fix other people and make other people understand and heal other people, we can be there for other people, but we can't change them. And I heard something the other day I really loved. It said, we're responsible to other people, but we're not responsible for other people.
And I like going back to what Janice says, to find those common grounds. So let's say we're sitting around the table with Uncle Ron and others like him, but back to that thing about, estrangement in the family. What are the things that you do want in the family? So bring the photo albums, come to the family dinner with a slideshow of your happy times in the childhood, or something that you can share. And playing games was a really good one, or go outside and throw a football around or whatever you do. And, it's distraction. It's almost like you would do with like a temperamental child. If
Mm,
your kid is having a meltdown, what do you do because Uncle Ron is kind of like a toddler. So what
exactly.
would you do if he was having a temper tantrum? You would
Exactly.
take him outside and give him something to play with and burn off his energy. So maybe think of it like that, just diversion and distraction, and arrive late, leave early, all these things we were talking about, all these little tips, and get back to your hotel, have a drink, watch a silly movie on TV and unwind, and go home.
Yeah, exactly.
And good timing. On that note, our next speaker, Greg Crosby, is here.
All right. Well, Terry, thanks for having me.
Oh, Brian, such an honor. One of these days we're going to meet in person. I've never actually seen you in person, but we've been such good friends for so long.
I'd have to travel, but I'll do it for you.
I know. Well, you know what? That means a lot to me and I would do that for you as well, because we both hate traveling, but maybe we'll meet in the middle of the country somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Everyone
Uh,
have a good holiday.
Thank you, my friend. See you soon. Bye. Okay, let's see. Where's Greg? We are starting now with Greg in just a few minutes. So we ran a little late with Brian. So we should probably take a little 5-minute break if anyone needs a little bio break. And Greg, there you are. Your technology looks good. How's your sound? Say something. Open up your microphone.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Nice to see you.
Good seeing you as well.
Yeah, you missed such a great conversation. The last two. Well, there's going to be a recording of all of this.
Well,
So
I will definitely be watching it. I look forward to this.
it's been great. And your friend Bob Niemeyer is here. I don't know if he's here for this one, but he's going to be with us most of the day, and he's coming up right after you. So we're going to take like a 5 or 6 minute break, and you guys can just kind of hang out and chat a little bit, and I will turn off the recording, and then we'll be right back.